Pendulum, Hotshot Racing, and Stay Cool. This is Staying In.
I've had my first child. Well, I didn't do anything. I just waited around a room for 23 hours. Whilst
Which, by the way, you make out. You're like, oh, same room for 23 hours.
Really inconvenient.
Yeah.
And it's been pretty tiring. And you know, when people all throughout the whole process, like of the general labour, everyone's all the thing that everyone says is, and I think this is a part of like a collective societal conditioning, is that what everyone says is like, oh, but it's worth it, isn't it? It's worth it, isn't it? You'll forget about it. You'll forget about it once he's here. It's just like, you don't forget about it, because otherwise the human race would just stop in terms of like population growth. I think this is this big collective lie we tell ourselves that that like, oh, you'll forget about it. You'll want another one in a few years. And it's like, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind couple of weeks, because I know as well, Kris, you were lucky enough to become an uncle as well.
I did indeed, yes. I slept though. I didn't wait around, for 23 hours. I mean, mine was very much a light touch, a role in the process. I bought them baby clothes and blankets and a toy and stuff. And I went down to visit them. I was in a very lucky position, Pete, because within 7 days I held 2 newborn babies. And
my word.
And I was saying this to Pete a little bit earlier, Sam, that I was very lucky in the sense that I caught both children, not literally, but in a sense that the both of them were on their best behaviour. Mm-hmm. And both of them are absolutely gorgeous, and it just lowered my blood pressure. And I suppose it must be quite irritating for you, Sam, if that's the only perception people have of newborns, and they're the ones saying to you, "Oh gosh, this is lovely, isn't it?" I mean,
it is annoying, but if he was screaming and crying whilst we have guests, that would cause us more stress,
right?
And
okay, yeah, of course, yeah,
make us more emotionally sort of anguished than we already are, because it's just like trying to have a conversation with someone and he's crying and restless, and like, even though like it's always a bit of like, well, he's always behaving when other people are around, the opposite would be an even worse situation.
And I tell you what, Pete, right, when I was holding him, Sam's son, he farts like an absolute menace.
Really?
Yeah, honestly. Well, it was extraordinary. It's like holding my hand in a jacuzzi.
What is it about the apple and the tree?
The day he was born, I had to come home on my own, because due to the world, I wasn't allowed to stay. And so I had to come home on my own, and it was one of the weirdest evenings I've ever spent on my own.
Oh, God. I can't imagine what that would be like.
I bet it was weirder than the time I went off to A&E with Pete and you watched Hellboy.
Well, it's similar in a way. So my wife was with my son, and she was just like, go home, get some rest. You're more worth to us rested tomorrow to help take care of us and whatever. So I was like, yeah, I know what I'll do, because the only thing I'd eaten over the last 23 hours was a bag of Jelly Babies, a bag of Sour Patch Kids, and some tea and toast.
Jesus Christ!
Oh God, that's like a witch's cauldron of your stomach.
And some orange and passion fruit Lucozade.
Oh my gosh,
Sam!
I'll tell you what, in that room, you're just like piling. You don't sleep. You're just wired.
I better say they could hear your, like, when you open your mouth, they could hear the sound of what seemed to be like popping candy, just this fizzing sensation.
So I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the local fish and chip place. I'm going to get like a nice like cod and chips.
Nice.
And just sit down and like have that as a meal. Maybe have a beer and then just go to bed. But being a Sunday, closed, devastated.
Dang.
So I thought, I'll just order a pizza or something. So I've got particular tastes with pizza, really. and none of the
Yeah, from all the foods you just
about to
mentioned, it
say.
sounds like you have a very discerning
I'm
palate.
surprised you had
go
any
on.
taste left.
so in terms of like without having to fill in any awkward forms for a local delivery person for a local place to sort of decipher, I thought I'd just order from Domino's. Ugh. My son's just been born. Spread the money around, right? So log on, and I find out that, and this is the first depressing thing of the evening. I know, actually, the first thing was being away from my wife and my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second depressing thing in the evening was that I discovered that night that Domino's do a special Home Alone meal deal for the discerning bachelor at home.
Oh no!
And so I thought, oh, all right, small pizza, potato wedges, bottle of Sprite, that'll do. Click through.
More fizziness.
Sorry, this meal deal isn't enough for delivery. And I'm just like, well, so I had to buy some cookies to bump up the price to get it delivered.
Yeah.
So Domino's know what they're doing. They're just like,
I love that they're like, oh, here's specifically the platter for one person. Hey, listen, lonely, you got to add some cookies onto that.
oh,
like-
you've got to come here and pick it up.
Otherwise, you've
What
got to
do
come
you
here and
want?
pick it up. We're not going to send over. What do you think? You think we're going to send over a driver friend for you to chat with for 10 minutes? Oh, do you want to share the pizza with me? Listen, loser, we're not letting you do that.
And also, it preys on the fact that anyone ordering the Home Alone meal probably isn't someone who wants to go in store to pick it up.
But the pizza for one, please. Like that's horrid.
And I thought, whilst I'm eating this depressing, lonely meal, I watch a film, and for some reason I picked X-Men: Dark Phoenix.
Oh my gosh.
Sam, this is a beautiful moment, and you chose X-Men: Dark Phoenix.
You didn't even pick the good X-Men film.
I know, and that was it. And then I went to bed.
Oh.
And like Jean Grey rising from the ashes, your partner returned.
So in years and years time,
Mm-hmm.
you know, your son's going to look up at you and say, "What was it like the first day when I was on Earth? What did you do?" I had Domino's pizza for one. I had some cookies, which I complained about, and then I watched a slightly naff X-Men film.
Yeah.
Without you and your mum.
But
Amazing.
to top all that, through my
Yeah.
paternity leave, both me and my son have managed to work our way through the Matrix trilogy.
Oh,
So,
perfect.
Wow.
Yeah, get him started.
What were his
early.
thoughts?
Mainly silence, which actually mirrored my own. So
a sort of like respectful awe of the work.
I feel like when he was looking up at me, smiling and bubbling away, he said to me, the first film's an exceptional piece of work, probably
Sure.
damn near a perfect movie,
Yeah.
well-paced, builds the world, excellent action scenes.
Yeah.
Then he said, the second one really loses the plot a little bit, but the action scenes are probably the best out of the whole three. And then the third one, he just, made a visible protest. And that was it.
Well, good. That's what a lovely way, and
Yeah.
what a lovely way as well. Again, this is the interesting thing, Sam, that you're having right now, because you are making the stories that you will tell him.
Yeah.
What were my first films? Well,
Yeah, well, the Matrix trilogy.
Hobby time now has become this thing whereby it's either your side hustle, like, oh, I'm into making pots and I sell them on Etsy, and it's like, is that really like, you're not just, I could just take this or leave this. It's like, no, this is my business now. Or, like, oh, well, I've been binging this television so that I can keep up. And I think that when hobbies demand that from you, they can become quite tiring, and that's definitely why I've been enjoying these kinds of games. One of which is a game called Hotshot Racing. And
Oh, I saw this on Get Indie Gaming, and it looks like tons of fun.
Right. So, side note, that Get Indie Game, that YouTube channel, Get Indie Game, is that it? That is excellent.
It's
I only
brilliant.
just found that, and it is really, really good.
Yeah.
No nonsense. Just like, here's some great games, and they came out this week. Amazing.
Yeah, he's a really great chap, and like he's got his own personal taste. You can clearly see in lots of his kind of top tens, but he's really steered me in the direction of some really, really good titles. Lots of really good indie games.
So, Hotshot Racing is, and you're all your eyes, well, all of your eyes, both of your eyes, both of your two sets of eyes, widened when I said that, and I think with good reason, right? Because if I was doing the marketing on this, I'd be like, yo, do you like the look of virtual racing? Do you like Sumo Digital, i.e. them lot what made the Outrun 2006 and Outrun 2 game that you really liked back in the day? Do you like the idea of 4-player split screen and 8-player online and like a really quick, fun, fast, drifty game with big, colourful characters, really cool music, all that stuff? And do you want to pay like 16 quid for it? And I'd be like, yeah, I do. So I was really excited to play it, and we got sent a key for it, which was very, very kind of them. And I'm mixed on it.
Okay.
So
the initial sell is like, yeah, give it to me, but the actual...
yeah, and then the actual like when you're into it, so it's really difficult to like to be too hard on it because almost every element of the game is exactly so up my street that I'm like, well, this is it. This is the game that I want. So it really does look like virtual racing. I mean, it obviously looks way better than virtual racing ever looked. Even the arcade version, like, so I played the arcade port of virtual racing literally like a couple of months ago. It is still excellent, but it really is ropey in terms of some of the visual elements. So this clearly looks way better, and it's an inspiration. It's not trying to be an identical thing. So that's fine, but it really does look great. I think it's got a really interesting visual art style, super low poly. Like the wheels are practically just like basically just octagons. So like it's that very low detail version of low poly. It handles quite a lot like Outrun. So the drifting of it feels so good.
I've been playing Burnout Paradise on my Switch, and that is pretty much all I'm looking to do is just drift constantly.
and drift, mm-hmm. and that like sweet spot where you can just feel where the like biting point on the oversteer, where you get back into being like driving straight, like that fine tuning that is really difficult, and they get that really nicely, but it's not Outrun's structure. It's actually circuit based, and the circuits are fairly varied, and they've got some interesting like visual style. It's definitely like influenced by arcade stuff, much less virtual racing in terms of its visual presentation. So
are you doing that thing where like you've got 30 seconds to make it to the next checkpoint?
Yeah, it is checkpoint racing, but it is a circuit.
Okay.
But as I say, like that visual style, sometimes you're like, absolutely, this looks like virtual racing. And then sometimes it's like, this is a jungle, or like, this is a streets circuit. And that didn't really ever get seen in those games. So all of that is great. The characters are pretty interesting. Well, they're not interesting, but they're fun and colourful, and they do what they need to do, which is to provide a little bit of like character, I suppose. Everything mechanically about it in that way is really, really good. The actual core core mechanics are really, really excellent. What's not great is the actual loop of the sort of meta game almost, which is, or the elder game, I suppose you might call it.
Elder game.
So the elder game. So it's sometimes called different things, but in game design. But elder game is essentially the idea of like, what is it that keeps you sticking around?
Oh, right,
and like really great mechanics can keep you around, but it's more likely to be something like what you might have seen in that Avengers game or in Destiny. It's the thing of like, okay, the Elder game is like the loop, the grind, like how do you move through these things? Mm-hmm. And the Elder game in Hotshot Racing is a series of, primarily a series of like circuit campaigns, right? So it's like four circuits, and you essentially race in a Grand Prix, and then you get more points, and then you win. And that in and of itself is fine. It's quite straightforward, but it's okay. And it definitely feels a lot like it's set up a little bit like that sort of classic PS1 era driving game model of like win enough things and then you will win and then it's fine. What's really not good and what I don't like about it is the rubber banding, which is absolutely the most egregious rubber banding I've ever seen in a game. Like, so the classic rubber banding is like, you guys have all played Mario Kart, right? Like,
oh yes,
and so you know what I'm talking about. Basically, if you're in eighth, it's very easy to get into second and third because the game essentially speeds you up and slows the people in the front down. And that actually works really well because that's kind of like arcadey and fun and silly. And the Mario Kart games that work the best with that is if you're actually really good, it's actually fine. You can always get ahead of the pack and it's no problem. Hotshot Racing is bad in that way because they have the rubber banding, which keeps the racers together. But the problem is they also have a drift and draft mechanic. And the draft mechanic is so forgiving that you can be loads of lengths behind another car and it will say, oh, yeah, you're drafting. So you're going to go faster than that car that you're behind. So you actually get behind the car, speed up, and then can overtake. And again, that works really well in something like Gran Turismo where there is none of that or very little of that stuff because it gives you that edge, it allows you to take over. But if you've got that plus rubber banding, it means that you can be the best driver in the world at this game and the AI they are never more than a couple of seconds behind. Like they are behind you all the time. And add on to that, if you take just a little knock, it can really like put your racing line out and you can really screw things up. The rubber banding also doesn't seem to affect you on higher levels, or at least maybe I'm just really bad at the game. That could be it as well. But I found that easy was incredibly easy to get into first and then stay there okay, because basically the technique is you get to first, people keep coming into first to take over, and then you get behind them and you go in front and then you go behind, and that's fine. And you just hold on to enough boost because you have a little nitro meter. By building up these drifts, you just hold on to enough boost, and then like the AI doesn't use it in the back straight, so you just use it and then you take them over and then you win, and then great. The sort of medium difficulty level is a little bit harder than that, but it's okay. But as soon as you get into the harder difficulty levels, like it is all over. And it's just ridiculously challenging, but not because the game itself is challenging. It's not because the opponents are good or the racing is harder or the tracks are more difficult. Like the tracks are all actually pretty straightforward. There are very few moments where I was like tested in, like you might have done with like a Ridge Race or a Daytona or something like that, or a virtual racing. But it's difficult because basically the AI cheats. Now, that's me being very negative about the game.
Does that not make for like more tense races?
No, because you always feel the hand of it cheating. Like that like it does feel like when you're behind. So when you're playing the hard levels, right, and you're behind, you're like, wow, what's happening in front of me is amazing. They're all sticking together, they're all jostling in the pack. But then as soon as you think about it for a second, you're like, oh yeah, but this is all just completely staged. So my ability at playing the game isn't really at test here. It's, can I get slightly lucky? And
Christ, it's like Neo in the Matrix, isn't it? Just like, yeah, but once you've seen the truth, you know the truth.
But that's it. And that, to me, genuinely, that thing in video games are a kind of sleight of hand magic, right? Because there's loads of things going on in video games where you're looking at it and you're like, wow, that looks so amazing. And if you were to pull the camera up in a debug mode and look at what was actually happening, you'd see that everything was just a little flat surface of a 3D thing, and that's not colored in, and the enemies are over there and they pop in before you see them, and it's all a bit of illusion and magic. And that's what I love about video games and making video games, because it's just like you essentially see how the sausage is made, and it's just like, wow, everyone is just really like just absolutely winging it. It looks great. But as soon as you feel that I think is when it like that illusion goes away and you're like, I don't like that. So that was, as I say, that's quite negative. But to me, that's not where the game shines, because so what it has is a time trial mode, and it is the best part about the game, because that racing, that drifting is so good, that handling is so nice, that the feeling of it, the speed of it, it's great. The fact that you have to make really challenging split second like timing based turns into corners and drifting in just the right way, knowing how each of the different cars, which have slightly different feels to them, how they're going to handle when you throw the back end out, all of that feels really great. And it lives on the time trials and the online leaderboards because of it. Because basically you can find out how good you are at the game because there isn't any rubber banding. There isn't any fake feel of like an AI director essentially saying like, okay, well, you shouldn't be that far ahead because you won't be having fun now. It's, you know, when I go up against players who are all around the world trying to like smash these leaderboard times, that to me is where the fun actually comes in. And like, again, to bring it back to Mario Kart, I remember you, because I never had one, I never had a Wii, but I remember you guys, Sam and Dan, in fact, you guys used to play Mario Kart time trials, right? Mm-hmm. And like that stuff of like that constant level of competition, that to me is, I think, where this game really shines, because the feel of the racing is really great. It's just the things they've layered on top of it sort of diminish it. Mm-hmm. And so the purer to the racing you can get, the more exciting the game actually is.
During the labour, where was a radio playing, and it was just like set to like a local station, we did have like a backup playlist on Spotify. Mm-hmm. But there was actually something quite comforting about like this this sort of it was called, what was the radio station called? It's called like Golden Classics, or like it was pretty much like one step away from old timey radio. And we were getting down to the business end, I want to say. No.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. The pushing. There we go.
Sure.
And Lisa pushing you away.
Yeah.
And this radio station was on, and it suddenly dawned on me that it's going to be completely a random selection of a tune in terms of what my child is born to. Like some people choose silence or like have it all like perfectly planned out, probably. And as the moment was going on, I was like, oh, Fleetwood Mac Go Your Own Way comes on. Like, oh, this would be perfect. Come on, Lisa, come on. All right, well, next one. But it actually ended up being Every Breath You Take by the Police.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So I would have preferred Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic, but you can't have it all.
That's brilliant.
Yes, it would have been. But yeah, it was quite a moment. And to be honest, even though I have problems with most of the cliches that are banded around about birth and labour and generally the experience before and afterwards, the one cliche which is absolutely true is that the tea and toast you have afterwards is the best tea and toast you will ever have. And
you get tea and toast afterwards?
Yep. Yeah, it's like, I don't know whether it's tradition or it's just like a thing that is done. I've only ever been through this once, but everyone talks about how good the tea and toast is, and they brought it through afterwards, and it's like big slabs of thick white bread slathered in butter and like a cup of tea to go with it. That's
amazing.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was even a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd not heard about that at all. That's extraordinary.
That is. You know how on the international stage the British are often sort of laughed at generally, but like I love the fact that's such a quaint British thing of like,
well done.
Well done. Put out a human. Fantastic. I'll get the tea on.
And it's in like those little tin mugs, and they bring out like a doily and just drape it across.
Yeah. Keep calm and carry on. And here's a tea and nice. Welcome to the world.
Welcome to the world, old chap. Here you go. Here's something.
Yeah. The baby's got one as well. Like
taps out the pipe on the edge of the bed. I want to talk about Pendulum,
the early noughties drum and bass musical act.
That's absolutely right, Sam. That no doubt was on your old timey radio during the birth of your son.
And everybody, now that we've just been listening to Pendulum, Tarantula, and we
well done. Well, that was a pull.
We've had a text message from David who says, "I remember getting smashed off my face to this. Thanks very much." Do you think we're ever going to get to that with like BBC Radio 2? Do you think we're ever going to have that?
Jeremy Vine just letting rip?
Yeah, exactly. Just like, and of course, this is for some of you. This is for some of you e-heads out there. We've got. Like, I wonder if they will. Like, I don't know. Like,
at some point, nostalgia will reign supreme, and yeah. At some point, it will.
Yeah, and here's from special request by Doris, it's Cypress Hill. Like, you know, like.
But like, I had this at the moment because both my grandmas are in the same home together, an old people's home at the moment, and when I go and visit them, they'll have like events on for them where they'll be listening to music from, say, the 40s or the 50s, and I'm thinking, fast forward to the future, like, if I'm in that situation, am I going to be dancing around the room to like S Club or something like that?
I mean, you will.
Well, no, I mean, I mentioned that as an example. I'm not saying that's part of my...
And it'll be posters of the Matrix trilogy.
I know.
Around the room.
Yeah, like who's like the modern day equivalent to like Vera Lynn or anything like that? It's...
It's what's that one? What woman who she was on?
God, it is like you and I are in an old people's home now, Peter, and having a chat. Oh, who was it? It was.
She was
I'd
the
say
one.
it's probably Dolly Parton is the.
No, that's older than us, man. No, like it would be.
Oh, you mean who will be our national treasure?
I remember working 9 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It would be that one who was on. She's got a beautiful voice, and then she speaks like she's like, all right, lads, I'm a singer and I'm well good, but she lost her voice recently.
Oh, Adele.
Yeah, that's her. Yeah. Adele. Something.
It's just Adele.
It's just Adele, is it?
It's just Adele. Jesus Christ.
Okay. Adele. Okay. I thought you were being a little bit familiar, like first name terms.
I mean, you knew that she'd lost her voice, but you didn't know her name fully. That's extraordinary. I'm always amazed by which bits of knowledge you retain and which bits you just dispense with as being superfluous.
Yeah.
Local woman loses voice.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it'll be people like her. It'll be that. It's not going to be stuff like Dappy.
I'm pretty sure that like when we are all because this is what will happen when we're all in the care home together.
Yeah.
No matter what's playing on the radio, we'll still be saying, "Put a donk on it."
Oh God.
So I want to talk about Pendulum, which
Pendulum
is a board game that came out this year. From Stonemaier Games, and we've talked about Stonemaier Games in the past, Viticulture, which I love, and Wingspan also they put out, and I've played pretty much most, if not all, of their oeuvre. They're a company that have released a discrete selection of games. They don't release that many games per year, so when they do, it's quite an event. And playing this game, I can only really describe it as being quite a strange experience. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit. It's a 1 to 5 player game. So again, that Stonemaier thing of having your automata sequence of, you can play it solo if you want to. 60 to 90 minutes, a standard kind of fare, what you'd expect. It's got a really interesting sounding premise. In this mythical kingdom of Dunya, you have a king whose principal role is to keep this great pendulum moving. Upon their passing, the pendulum has stopped, and all of us as players have to compete for the throne. And so to do that, we have to prove that we can conquer the most lands, win the most votes, and gain culture, military, and wealth, all to show that we use our time the most efficiently. So, Pete, I'm going to come to you because Sam's played this game with me. Mm-hmm. Based on that premise, what kind of a game are you imagining?
Worker placement.
Yep, tick, correct. And worker placement, which is where you've got like a certain number of playing pieces, meeples, and you have to put them on action spaces to determine what action you're going to do. And the challenge often happens when you can't go to spaces because other players have taken them. And we've seen this in Viticulture, for example, where you've got that agony of choice of knowing when to place your work at the right time to do the certain actions. So you're absolutely right. There is worker placement here. But what makes this quite an interesting game is that it's paired with another genre, which I don't have much experience with, because generally speaking, it's a genre that I tend to avoid, and that's simultaneous action selection, where in this game, you take your goes at the same time. There are no goes per se. So when Sam and I played it, we were frantically just moving our pieces around the board at the same time. And that's quite an interesting dynamic for a worker placement. It's not like I sit there and go, okay, Sam, it's Sam's go. I'll wait for Sam to take his go. Then it's my go. And then I can take all the time I want to do that. We're taking these goes simultaneously.
Yeah, that's kind of that real-time aspect. I'm with you again, Kris. It's always been a genre that I've kind of wanted to enjoy. Like, we both played Tim Fowers' real-time game, Now Boarding.
Yeah, which was fun.
Which is fun, which is all right, which is kind of like, it's slightly a bit different to that. But I feel like the real-time aspect probably needs a bit more explaining.
Yeah.
Is it's like how Now Boarding would work, you'd have like 30 seconds to like plan out a series of actions you were going to do, and then in real time you'd then have a limit, and then you'd have to perform all those actions simultaneously as a group, cooperatively, in order to complete certain goals. And then another game that we play, which is probably the only real-time game, spoilers, that I really, really enjoy, which is called Pit Crew.
Yeah. We have a league with our respective partners that we...
With our respective partners. Me and you always play. My wife and your partner always play together, and we've never beaten them. They beat us every single time. And I feel like the reason why I enjoy that as a real-time experience is that it fits in with the theme. The fact that in real time, simultaneously, you're both trying to fix up a car as fast as you can. Essentially, as the car's coming into the pit, you're the pit crew, so you're applying cards and putting things down in order to get that car back on the racetrack as fast as you can. Whereas with Pendulum, it's slightly...
Yeah, it's slightly different. And I think for me, it's actually not necessarily a theme, because I quite like... It does fit in with the theme for me. But the thing I like about Pit Crew, Sam, is that it's a short burst. Like, we're frantically doing it for a few minutes, and then there's that moment where we all exhale and go, oh my gosh, that was, oh, I see what you did there. You played that card. Yeah, I had to do this. Oh gosh, you got this far away around the track. Okay, next round, and it's a quick game. This is a 60 to 90 minute game, Pendulum. Mm-hmm. So when you see that genre, you're thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to take a breather at all during this? Am I actually going to be able to talk to other people around the room? Or is it just going to be me in my own head doing my own thing, getting slightly cross with Sam that he's gone where I've gone, but I can't stop and tell him because it's too late. I have to keep going. This isn't that. It's a little bit of that, but it's not that completely. So if I just explain what it is, the setup.
Okay. Strap yourself in.
So I'm going to use my time efficiently now. The board itself is split primarily into 3 areas. Each has a sand timer, and each of these areas has 2 rows. And on each row, there is a sand timer there. And when the sand has run out of one timer, I flip it and move it to the other row in that section. That's what it is. And each of these rows has spaces, which are the action selection spaces, where if I move my piece to it, I can do that action. And everyone has their own player mat in front of them. This is my player I'm playing at, and mine's slightly different to Sam's. It's a slightly different setup. And if I flip it over, there's an advanced side, which is more different to what Sam's got. So it adds that little bit of variety there. This is the catch, and this is the one rule of the game that allows you to get these breathers in between, is that I can only place my meeple in a row that hasn't got a timer next to it. And I can only do an action if there is a timer next to, if a timer has been flipped to the row that my meeple is on. So that means that I can put all my meeples in empty spaces, and then it's just waiting for the timer to end, and then it flips there, and then I've got that frantic moment of doing the action, but I cannot take that meeple away because the timer's still there next to it. So just to kind of explain how that kind of plays out then, what makes this particularly interesting is that all the timers have different durations. So one lasts 45 seconds, one lasts 2 minutes, and one lasts 3 minutes. So you tend to have actually more time than you think you do. And you can use that quite strategically. So say, for example, I have my meeple on a section and the sand timer is just flipped to it. That's great. I can do that action now. But then I realise that I've got to pay a cost to do that action. And I look at my board and I've not got enough money. What am I going to do? It looks like I've wasted my action now because I cannot move my meeple because there's a timer there. However, this is the 2-minute sand timer, which means it's going to be quite a while before that sand runs out. But I've noticed I've got a free meeple somewhere else, which I can put onto the board with the 45-second timer, flip that over, do that action to get money, and I've just got enough time left with my 2-minute sand timer to pay that money to do that action. So it's really quite interesting, and we almost discovered that as we were playing, actually, how you can use those variable time limits tactically. I'm not saying necessarily that's a winning thing for me. It's not something that will make me kind of come back and play it to kind of develop that tactic further, because it is quite a stressful tactic, because, it's not something I would recommend you doing. And I imagine there are players out there that would take great pleasure in that and go, aha, I got there, beat the system, because it's almost an engine in itself. But unlike other games that they've done, like Scythe, where you've got this little engine, you can take, generally speaking, as much time as you want. You're not as rushed, whereas this, you always feel like you're a little bit rushed, and that if the engine is time dependent. And also at any moment, Sam could see what I'm doing and literally just move the timer away from me when the sand has run out. So other things as well, you use these actions to add boosters to your board to get more bonuses. You can also to get votes, which a bit like in Viticulture, when you decide what time you want to wake up in the morning, that determines who gets first pick on certain things and gets certain extra bonuses. And each round plays out until the purple sand timer has been flipped 3 times, and then you get certain bonus cards, and then you kind of reset the game. And that's it, really.
This sounds very stressful.
It is and it isn't.
Yeah, it's really, it's a really strange game because like it has these moments in it, like describing it and the way you think it is, you think it's going to be this really intense and stressful experience, but it's, to use probably a bit of an obvious sort of metaphor, or it is to say that it is a roller coaster of a game. And I mean that in terms of how the thrill of a roller coaster is sometimes the moments before the actual like loop the loop. It's the moment that it holds you in that moment of suspension before that rush. Sometimes like that is like the critical thing, because there'd be moments where, because of the way that the sand timers are, you just won't be able to do anything. You would have done your actions on the sand timer and you're just sitting there and waiting for the sand timer to run out, so then you can flip it, and then which frees up your meeples to do other things. And it was in those moments that Kris and I would like look at each other and we'd just laugh and we'd just be like, oh, like kind of like childishly excited, just like, and you just sit there and just be like, right, I've planned what I'm going to do,
yeah,
and now I'm just waiting, yes. And then when it happens, it's a bit like, oh, okay. But still, for that like brief sort of second where you just held there in like the grip of the game, it actually does have this strange sort of like rapture that it holds you in. It's really, really odd. And like, I think, and I came to this realization when me and Kris played Castles of Burgundy. Right, and we played Castles of Burgundy, and we finished it. It's the first time I played it, and I went, "Huh, that's a game." And I realised throughout playing it, maybe like the hour or 90 minutes I played it, that I'd had no emotional reaction to it whatsoever. And whenever I play a game, that's the thing I'm always looking for. Like every game that I play, I will always, if I know that I'm enjoying it or there's something in it that I do enjoy, it will make me laugh, it will make me like jump up and down excited, it will make me angry, but in a good way, like that good sort of frustration from competition, or like, oh, I just didn't do the right thing. But when we played Castles of Burgundy, I had a realization that I'd had no reaction to that at all. Whereas with Pendulum, it was getting there. Like I was like just sort of like doing my stuff and just like, oh, this is fine, but I'm not really having any sort of like spontaneous reaction to it. Then suddenly in that moment where everything just stopped and paused, like I just had this like giggling sort of joy for it. And I would play it again just for that.
Yeah.
Just for that feeling, really. It's really, really strange.
Yeah.
Really strange.
And I think that there is an audience for this, definitely. Like, and it's worth saying that Stonemaier very kindly gave us a review copy of this, and it's designed by Travis P. Jones, who, from what I understand, hasn't released any other games, and art by Robert Leask, who equally, likewise, I've not seen any other games that he's worked on. So this is a fresh, new, young pairing, and the art is really interesting. I just think that the theme is a little thinly applied. Like, I really love that idea that it's this pendulum. The mythos is really interesting. And I get that idea that the timers are going back and forth reflect that swing. But I just, the actions in those areas didn't feel that distinctive.
But I think that in the same way that, like, I love roll and write games, so I'm always trying to find out like the next iteration on that theme and see how it can be expanded and tweaked, played with and fooled with, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think that if worker placements are like your thing and you know that you like worker placement games, then this is a really interesting iteration on that as a mechanic. And unfortunately, like all experiments, not all of it, it's like firing on all cylinders. Not everything sort of hits you, but I feel like there is something there. And I think like Pendulum is one of those games, like Scythe in a way, that if I was in like a board game cafe and someone said, "Oh, this is on the shelf, should we play this?" I'd go, yeah, all right. I'd play that again.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I don't think that's sort of damning with fate praise. I think like just in the way that there are movies, there are albums, there are books which fill the same sort of hole, there are board games that do it as well. It's just unfortunate that some of these board games cost like
quite a lot of money. This sounds to me a little bit like, it's interesting. The way I kind of come away from this is, it sounds a bit like, I think your roller coaster analogy is really interesting. I don't like roller coasters, but like, I wouldn't want to be on a roller coaster for 8 hours a day. I wouldn't want to go on a roller coaster every day. But every once in a while, you want that emotional thrill of the roller coaster. And that may or may not be worth you may not want a season ticket to the park to experience that. But every once in a while, maybe that is something that you do want to do, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Sam's analogy is spot on. I think there is an audience for there, and I think it is like their peanut butter and chocolate. It's these two flavors that for them might just taste perfectly together. But for me, like, who's not, as we said before, wholly wedded to that simultaneous action selection, I was tasting more of the peanut butter and less of the chocolate, and I think for me it is actually the theme. And a bit like Spirit Island, Sam. Do you remember Spirit Island? When we first played it, thinking, oh my God, there's a lot going on here. But what kept us in it was that sense of a narrative we built. So here in Pendulum, when I get a certain amount of culture, I don't know what that means thematically. I don't know what like 5 culture means over 2. Whereas something like Spirit Island, it says, oh my word, you've got this. This means a volcano has now erupted. And you go, oh my God, and I'm playing that. Look what we can do here. Oh, I've got 5 culture. I thought, oh, well, that could have meant something like, I don't know, a university, a library, or a gallery. I wanted to feel like I was proving my might against all the other people around the table rather than just a numbers game, which is enough for some people. But for me, I kind of wanted a little bit more in that regards. And also, you've got an El Grande worker here, which is something that's been taken from Viticulture.
And it's called the same.
Yeah, they call it an El Grande worker. Literally, like, he's walked off the vineyard in the Mediterranean into this fantasy kingdom, and again, I don't know. It just it was just, and maybe I'm nitpicking. I don't know. I genuinely do think everyone should play this because it is so unique. I can't think of anyone that has combined these two together, these two genres, and it is really worth playing. And also, Stonemaier being Stonemaier, they try to account for every possible type of playing. I mentioned solo. But they've also created a variant which removes the real-time action selection. So what you have, Pete, is like you have like a list of the moves that occur, which timer gets flipped when. So you've got no time pressure or anything. You haven't got to wait for the sand. The only thing that you're working with is, once that purple sand timer has been flipped 3 times, that's the end of the round. The only issue is it's always the same order every time. And I'd like to have seen maybe a deck of those to add a little bit of variety. I know that Rado, who reviews the game, also, he prefers that to the real time, which I just can't imagine why.
Bonkers.
Yeah,
Bonkers.
Just because I've played it a few times with that, because they recommend you start with that to get a feel for the mechanics, which is lovely. I think it's great. But I couldn't imagine playing it that way all the same time, because I just do the same thing.
Isn't this lovely? Like, right, that's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently. The fact that you can see here a game that is like mechanically really interesting, trying something very different, and you're like, yeah, some people are gonna really love this. And then like variants of it, people seem to like more than that, and some people really don't like that. And isn't it really interesting that like there's such a wealth of different board games now that people can be like, oh, I really like this thing about this board game, and then I don't quite like that about this board game, but I can see the quality of it. Like, I think it's really cool that like it's not just a case now of like, well, Catan's just a good game, or like, yeah, this is just all these board games that are just classics where you're like, well, this is clearly just a good game. Now, like, it feels more and more and more like we're getting these board games where it's like, that's not my cup of tea, that's not my kind of board game. And you're like, oh, is this a maturing? This feels like a maturing medium.
Yeah. Or this is not the variant I play. So they're kind of giving you different. They're giving you different house rules.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And you can kind of mix and match it. You can oscillate between the real time and the kind of scripted version. So you can go from like the roller coaster to the carousel. I don't know what the other equivalent would that be.
The teacups.
The ghost train. I don't know.
I don't want to bring things down.
All right. What, like an octave?
Like, I don't want to bring things down. Sam, these are the jokes that you're going to need to start making, okay?
All right, okay, sorry.
All right, learn from Kris.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, but we have received word that Brannigans, the crisp, of course, that we all said was a top tier, god tier crisp.
I didn't.
Is its parent company KP have decided that they're not going to be doing Brannigans again.
Good.
This is a casualty to the Rona. So
No, it's not.
it's got to be, isn't it? Because Brannigans are only Brannigan. Okay. Brannigans are only eaten in pubs and Dan's house, right? and
Is it not to do with the fact that the branding, which featured a portly butcher on a packet, maybe is a little bit outdated?
Yeah, and the bag was just brown.
I mean, Brannigans, Pete, they're horrible. What do you see in them? They taste like shrapnel.
Yeah, but they're awful.
How
terrible.
Right? Okay. How dare you? The ham and mustard one was
A massive disappointment.
No,
it was beef and mustard, wasn't it? So.
No, there was ham and mustard as well, I believe.
Is basically the end of this going to be that you're going to email the Crisps Council of Great Britain?
I'm going to write to
bring
them.
back Brannigans.
Bring back Brannigans. You start the hashtag now. But so basically, I just wanted to, in memoriam.
It was smoked ham and pickle.
Ham and pickle. Sorry, well, it's been a while. I just want to sort of go around the room and for us to all share what we all miss about Brannigans going down.
I honestly don't miss anything about them, really. It's a bold opening to a eulogy, I'm not going to lie. But they're not my crisps. They're not my crisps, unfortunately.
That's unfortunate.
I discovered paprika Pringles this year, and it has changed my life.
Oh, paprika Pringles, yeah.
Oh, also bad news. Well, I guess we'll get it all out of the way now. You know those crisps that Dan said that he absolutely loves? The what was it, sour cream and chili or something like that? They were like a Pringles set.
Oh yeah, the Pringles variety, like sour cream and cheese or something weird like that.
There was some
cheese and chili. Cheese and chili. Gone, absolutely gone. Like, so I went looking for it the other day because I was like, I must try this.
Yeah, just in the fields, just.
Yeah,
just like
Binoculars.
opening a can of Pringles is like a mating call.
Yeah. Putting up posters on like telephone lines. Have you seen this brand of crisps? Gone. Discontinued. And not only that, but I'm slightly worried because apparently it's been discontinued for about 2 or 3 years, and I'm fairly confident Dan said that he managed to get a tube of it last year. So
we can only hope that Daniel has probably stockpiled quite a lot of them.
I am currently living again in lockdown. It's awful.
A bold statement from Sam.
Bold statement, yeah.
I think it's not good.
It's not good. But interestingly, I have been signed up to be part of I don't know if I can say this. I'm pretty sure it's all right. But I have been signed up to be part of a COVID test.
Have you?
So yeah. Me and my wife are currently getting tested.
Ooh, what's the test?
Spelling, grammar,
yeah,
general knowledge.
Spell COVID. It's just a simple swab test.
Okay.
But we get it done like every week to see if we've got it. But it's just like we're in lockdown, we're not going anywhere. but it has been a bit of a shame because obviously it means that we're not able to sort of meet with family as usual and play games. But before we went into lockdown, we were able to sneak in a party game actually, called Stay Cool, which I'm not quite sure where the inflection should be, where it's like stay cool or stay cool or stay cool.
I like the last one. That's my favourite.
Okay, we'll go with
Stay.
that. Stay cool. So if you've seen the box art for this game, like it pretty much is, it feels like a panic attack in a box.
Oh, God.
Which is quite a difficult sell, but if I tell you it's from the same company that brought us Decrypto, Scorpion Mask, then it might sort of pique your interest. And it is again a little bit like Pendulum. It's a bit of an interesting concept on like a party game. All it is these separate cards and the selection of coloured dice, brightly vibrant coloured dice that have got letters on it. And the aim of the game is you'll have one person who's the active player, and you'll have two other people who are like the question askers, right? And one person will ask questions to the active player, the player with the dice, that have to be answered verbally. And these will be like sort of like standard, silly, sort of general knowledgey kind of questions, like what is the third month of the year? Spell the word bridge backwards. That kind of like sort of silly, sort of fun. And the other person asks the active player, the player with the dice, questions that have to be spelled out using the dice. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
Again, like in Pendulum, this all happens in real time. So this is the idea of like, stay cool, stay cool. And yeah, it's a really interesting party game because it's probably one that it's sort of unique in my collection, which has that sort of intense multitasking experience, but also one that is also quite theatrical and quite showmanship-like. Like usually when we play party games, things like Medium and
Herd Mentality
or Decrypto, generally you're doing things in a group or cooperatively. Like it's very rarely that like one person is really the star of the experience, and if they are, it's usually because they're hidden, like in Spyfall or like when you're playing Codenames or something like that, you're a captain or you're a hidden sort of imposter. So this really puts like you at the center of, as a player, of the experience, like answering these questions whilst also having to write out answers to questions whilst like under some sort of time pressure. And like I don't know how that sounds to you both, whether that sounds like an awful and terrible experience or something that you think you would quite like to, because that's kind of where the game falls in terms of like people who I've played it with really bounce off it initially, but enjoy subsequent rounds because they want to try and test themselves.
Right.
Or people take to it like a duck to water because they're really good at multitasking anyway and see it as like a badge of honor that they're able to, as Kris is demonstrating now, effectively pat their head and rub their tummy at the same time. So how does it sound to you both? Like,
I mean, it's this feels like a game I would have to be in the mood for.
mm-hmm.
Like this doesn't feel like a Game of Splendor. Yeah, why not? Why not? Do you know? But you know what I mean. Like there are some games you crack out and you're just like, well, nobody could ever like. You can always play Splendor. Like it's just perfect. It's just the perfect game, guys. But like you'll never not feel like doing that because it just fits in so well. Whereas like there are some games where you're like, Twilight Imperium, just a cheeky game of it. So I would imagine, what kind what kind of parties are you going to play this? Because I assume this is the sort of thing you play at a party, but is this a like, oh, we're having a nice glass of, Sancerre, and we've just finished off the hors d'oeuvres, and or is this we're having 3 pints and a couple of packets of Brannigans?
Well, I think that there is a term bandied around the board game community quite a lot, which is called beer and pretzels. Like, this is a beer and pretzels game.
Oh, I hate that.
Which is kind of something that came out of the Americana sort of Ameritrash games. And I think that even though beer and pretzels is kind of reductive, I feel like by that we mean very relaxed, very sort of willingness to make mistakes, not really stickler for like imposing rules, kind of laid back.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I think that's where Stay Cool really finds its feet. Like, it's strangely for a party game, like I genuinely feel like the best player count is 3. And
Really?
I'd have to play it a bit more, but I feel like the downtime for the person who's either not the active player, who's not asking either the 2 sets of questions, is like it's quite long, really. And even though it's quite a spectacle for someone else to kind of watch, and it really does like bring people to the table when they're trying to see, like, because it is quite a feat to like answer questions and write out questions at the same time. I feel like with a group of 3 of you having like an evening, like quite a relaxed social like evening together, this could be like a really fun game to really like challenge the small group, and there's no downtime where you're waiting sort of like for it to be your go or for you to read questions. Like I feel like that is a kind of evening with it, because Stay Cool like has, so as the rounds go on, so there's like this little like in Pendulum, like the sand timer, and the idea is that like whoever's not asking questions, or if there's a spare player, they basically flip over the sand timer 4 times, which indicates the 2 minutes that you've got to try and answer as many of these questions and write as many of these questions out. In the second round, the active player has to tell the person when to flip the timer over, and if they don't do it before the timer's flipped over, that's the end of their go. On the third round, the egg timer's hidden behind the box.
Oh, dear Lord.
So, like, I feel like with a smaller group of people, this is the kind of game that could get to a point where there's a collective sense of achievement that could come with the person who is able to complete those tasks concurrently. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel like there would be a genuine sense of, oh, he's going to do it. I can't believe he's going to do it, and I'm here to be part of that. Like, I was part of that moment where they were able to do it. And yeah, I think that is the sweet spot for a game like this.
It's interesting when you said that. Like, for me, initially when you were describing this game, for me, the setup I was imagining was I would play this drunk with you lot. Like, there'd be quite a few of us, and we'd play just that first variant, because I think obviously it'd be quite tricky to kind of remember the rules and stuff. But I think I would play this game because I think that high pressure situation I may not enjoy as much, but I would take pleasure in watching somebody else go through that, and I think we would kind of enjoy that cycle, that process. And that's what I'd get from me in a manner that I don't get when I'm playing Gobble, which I just find very stressful, and it's one against all. I like that sense of collaboration, but for me the dynamic would be a larger group, slightly drunk, and so therefore I don't feel the pressure as much if I get it wrong, because I'm a little bit inebriated.
There is a place for the larger group, and I think that definitely the more you play the game, the more you relax into it. And if you can relax into it straight from the start, that really helps.
Okay.
Because when we first got this out of the box and we got it on the table, like, I don't think it helped that I was the first player to go, because I took it very, very seriously and very competitive. I'm like, I'm going to show off my multitasking skills, and aren't I brilliant? And that is really the wrong approach for it. I feel like that sort of almost collaborative, like succeeding and doing this together is, and genuinely being more relaxed about it, yields greater results, which I think, Kris, you're right in that kind of, environment, it's not to say that you have to be drunk to play this, but I think, again, going back to the beer and pretzels things, what we're alluding to is that kind of social environment where, you know, it's kind of the same social environment where you're playing beer pong.
Yeah.
And again, not advocating getting drunk or anything like that, but there is a genuine, like, skill and achievement and a genuine enjoyment in seeing other people achieve something special playing beer pong that I think is shared in a game like this. Like, when you see someone like bounce a ball and get it into like the last cup in a beer pong game perfectly, even though you've got the forfeit of drinking whatever in that cup or whatever you're doing, there is still a part of you which is kind of like, fair play, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Like you know,
I'm just thinking about that time that for your 30th, Sam, we played Spyfall for about 4 hours.
Yeah, probably longer than
that. And we admittedly, we haven't played it much since then, because I think we actually played every possible permutation of that game. But like that's the kind of atmosphere I'm thinking about, you know, where we were just, it'd be like, and the more merry we got, let's say, the harder it became to conceal your identity as the spy. And it was just hilarious. And as a consequence, as a group, we were able to give ourselves permission to, you know, look like a fool in front of each other and fail. And that's what I like, that's what draws me to party games, because usually I'm not a big fan of them. If I feel comfortable being able to kind of fail in others, which I would spectacularly at something like this if I took it seriously, that would be great. But yeah, it sounds really interesting, and the fact that it's also brought to us by the people who brought us Decrypto as well, another game that I really love. Sounds like another hit on their hands. Really, it's great. That was another episode of Staying In with Peter Willington, Sam Turner and myself, Kris Darby. It's the usual score. Stay updated with all that we are up to on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. @StayingInPod is all you need to find them. Feel free to join the conversation and ask us questions via these platforms, or just email us at stayinginpod@gmail.com. If you just want to get a quick list of the games we discuss, our Steam curation page has you covered for the digital, with our Board Game Geek profile taking care of the analogue stuff. Before I go though, I would just like to say a big congratulations to Sam for making it all the way through X-Men Dark Phoenix, with additional congratulations to both him and Dan and their partners on the birth of their children. Till next time, bye.